Hello and welcome to another episode of the TF Cast. Today's date is October 27th, 2021.
Today with us, we have musician Liz Draper. We were recently networked through a photo shoot for The Current. And Liz, I don't really want to introduce you. You just have so much stuff going on. Just like, tell us the first thing.
The first thing. Well, I'm an upright bass player and electric bass player. I like that you just cracked that beer. That's pretty great. I don't know. I'm a full-time musician. I recently moved back to Mankato. Jacob and I met because the current radio station through NPR, or NPR, I should say, got in touch with me and did a story about transitioning to be kind of more of a solo artist, and then we hit it off, and I got invited to be on the show, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah, well, we've heard some of your music now too. We recorded a couple things here, and I think we've caught you around town at some performances with other groups. So it's fun to see the solo set, which I think is a big part of what we're probably talking about today, right? We can touch on some of your previous projects, but your solo set's probably where we'll sit for a bit. So I guess what has it been like for you to transition from doing more like gigging out and touring towards working by yourself? Like, what has that been like? What are you focusing on? What are you thinking about?
Well, it kind of came naturally given the pandemic.
Oh, sure. Forgot about that.
Oh, good. One of us did. No, I mean, I had actually, not long before the pandemic happened, I had gone out to my uncle's cabin and recorded some solo bass stuff that I was wanting to use for like a solo album and to kind of get out there. And then I really had no excuse once the pandemic started, and it just gave me an opportunity to be like, okay, why am I making music? Who am I making music with? Well, I guess I'm making music with myself, and was just really excited to explore it. So, yeah.
Cool.
Was a lot of the songs that came out, were they parts of other things or ideas that you'd had for a long time? Like, what pushed you in that direction?
What pushed me in the direction of the song choices?
Yeah, I mean, like the general mood, atmosphere, energy of the songs.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I really like listening to kind of post-classical, very sound, textural-oriented things. And I also really like folk music and sort of like haunting old traditional songs. So I found that just a natural way, natural voice that I could use the bass for and to come out that way in my solo music. But it's also things that came up perhaps with other groups, different ideas that playing with other people influenced. I don't know.
Have you played bass in that way in other projects, or is this kind of a new way of doing that?
I've played it in a similar way in other projects.
Okay.
I've always had kind of a draw towards, I hate to use the word like experimental or something, but I've always been very interested in that. So even when I've done more pop things full time, I've oftentimes had like a couple people that I've collaborated with, and we've together improvised, or we've together written, maybe a little bit more experimental or avant-garde or darker. Like I had a folk doom metal band for a while, and those kinds of things. I was like, okay, well, I really liked where we were going with that. Like, how can I try to achieve that on my own, on my like upright bass? Yeah.
What does a folk doom metal band sound like? I don't imagine as many distortion pedals, or is it just the same?
Well, okay, so the group was called Up the Mountain, Down the Mountain, and we were a full-on doom metal band, like amplified. It was electric guitar, electric bass, cello, and drums.
Oh, cool.
But we all really liked playing outdoors and doing like guerrilla style shows and bike riding and whatever. So then we're like, oh, maybe we could try to play our songs like in like an art gallery, but acoustic. I'll bring my, upright bass out, and the cellos, she like could do her parts pretty much. And then our drummer stripped down to a doomback and some kind of crazy percussion side things. And so yeah, it sounds like unamplified, slow doom metal, kind of a mix of like Led Zeppelin meets like Sleep or something, but without the loudness of the amps. But what I find really cool about like upright bass or cello or things like that, you can get all these like things that almost sound like distortion, or they sound like feedback in harmonics or different bowing attacks. So like exploring that in an acoustic way, I found really exciting and really, really gratifying. So
one of the interesting things that I really noticed and enjoyed about your performances today were like the very interesting dynamics that you used, and from either like, and it's probably to the focus. Like I think having one noise making thing doing everything, you really kind of focus in on that. But either way, like going between like bowing and plucking and a lot of rhythmic changes, it was really kind of just neat to listen to and cool to kind of let it carry you through the story it was telling. It felt very,
thank you.
I don't know. Yeah, it felt like a story. I feel like that's how I would put it, maybe.
That's the greatest compliment ever. Because I mean, I love songwriters that are telling stories, whether it's with their words or with their instruments or whatever. So if you're able to go like kind of travel somewhere else by listening to what I play, that's really awesome. I mean, I love that. I also love, creating something that might be like a bedding of sound that you are totally free then to get it. It's like almost like like a choose your own adventure or something, right? Like just like a time to step away to like almost meditative, or like we're just to try to get away from like the bustle. And it's just like, okay, there's like some sounds going on. There's some melodies. There's like whatever. But like if you can just kind of have that for a time to just zone out, wherever that, like, I think that's also really, really great.
Did you do that subconsciously at all before you started like making the music with intention? Would you ever kind of make those sounds for yourself for that purpose?
Oh yeah, all the time, I suppose. I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, performing is one thing, but also like just being in your own space and getting to spend time with your instrument and just doing what you want. Like my whole goal is to sort of get into another headspace or to have that release. I mean, that's a big reason why I play, I suppose. It's like, I'm not like escapism so much as just like you're getting to explore another dimension, maybe, like just when you get in when you get in the zone, no matter whatever kind of art you're creating, it's very like freeing. So yeah, like making those sounds and trying to just, and it's a movement thing too, right? You're just getting your body into it, you're getting the sounds and just.
Well, I don't know if this is exactly what you're asking. I feel like one could be very proficient with the instrument and never get to where you've gotten with some of those sounds and like the way that you tie them together. So is that like inspired by something with someone else you've seen do it similarly, or was it a result of like an exploration or practice that kind of led you to find that way of performing?
Well, I guess I've always, that's a great question. Like been moved by people who seem like they're being moved by something. I also think that listening, I seen people that are really, really proficient, but it seems like maybe their intention is to be really, really proficient. And like that is amazing, and I would love to be very, I aim to be very proficient technically, but I've been very moved by people playing that aren't necessarily super technical, maybe it's because they are tapping into like a story, or they're playing a traditional song or folk song, and there's other kind of layers to that. Like, I am not super interested in somebody who can be like, oh yeah, I'm going to play around the circle of fifths frontwards and backwards, and I can do every flat nine substitution and listen to me solo. Woo, like, cool. That's great. Why do you do that? You doing that just to prove something? That's okay too. I don't know. But yeah.
Does the way that you're performing with this project specifically feel like an authentic representation of your own skill and musical interests? Is it really like that kind of a thing?
It definitely is. Okay. Yeah. Also, it's constantly, evolving. I'm constantly trying to kind of see where it could go, like the next step as far as if I want to tap into be more melodic versus more textural versus not, but yeah.
Cool. I mean, it seems like it. I think that it's shown in the way that it comes out, that it feels like, yeah, someone who understands the way an instrument works and sounds and has technical proficiency, but maybe is like at moments like putting it on the shelf for later. Not that it wasn't. I don't know how to describe what it's like. I think that some of the sounds you were playing in those sounds would probably sound like shrill or uncomfortable with some other groups or something.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know if it's like some of that tension would be kind of strange with other things.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Some of that. So it was really cool to hear it by itself, and kind of like that's where I think it really became like dynamic and exciting. So
you just generally don't hear a lot of solo bass performances in general. Like, but I think some of the sounds you're describing are basically what you were talking about with that doom metal band, where you're talking about the sounds you could get out of the bow. Which, that is really, it is really fun to hear that, because I wish more people would, do more solo bass stuff, because it's a treat. Anyone who's ever played the bass, they like to do that.
It's great. Part of it too, I feel like especially like the last 2 years now, or a year and a half, or whenever 2020 started, like it's also, there's like kind of a trust that I've been going on with myself, being like, okay, I like this stuff. I need to just trust that I can put it out there and somebody maybe will like it, as opposed to like, oh, I don't know, does anybody want to hear the solo bass besides just other bass players? Or like, well, and if that's the way it is, that's fine too. But kind of just permission to myself to try it and to explore it and perform it.
Have you had the opportunity to play this set out much, or do some solo stuff? Yeah,
I have. So I've done a few things in the Twin Cities at a couple different. There's a art gallery there called the White. Well, it used to be called the White Pages, and now it's the Mirror Lab, and I've done things there. There's a like kind of a venue / house called Beat Stews. I've performed solo there. With this stuff, I just did a thing in Rochester, Minnesota last Friday, but I tamed it down a little bit because it was noon lunch kind of stuff for people that are,
there's nothing wrong with a dramatic sandwich,
it was a little dramatic, but it was a little bit more like tonal. It stayed pretty tonal for most of it, but yeah. I'm getting some opportunities, so it's cool. But I'm looking forward to more.
Well, let's talk a little bit about like what got you here, both in Mankato and then as a bass player, because you've had quite the history of playing with bands that some probably people would know, others maybe more unheard of. But if you could, I guess to start, like, was there anyone that you're not currently playing with that you would love to play a set with in the future, but like for no real reason, just like it would be cool?
that I used to play with,
sure.
but or what do you mean? Like anybody in the world?
So
or what are we talking? What are the stipulations here?
A band or an artist that you used to play with.
That I used to play with.
And then that for some reason right now sounds like a great time. And then the band that they came from, so we can just start with that one.
Okay. Well, I mean, you want to get dark?
Sure. Yeah. Jump in.
That doom metal band, we lost our guitar player, so then we just after that we're all like we can't do this. But like playing with that group again would be amazing for so many different like reasons. But people that I used to play with, I mean, I guess I feel like I've been able to keep playing with people that I've
You haven't lost too many projects over the years.
Not I mean things change, but there's a reason for it, you know. Yeah. So
that's good. Okay,
grow and evolve.
What I was trying to find an interesting way to come at the bands you've previously been a part of. So now, what you right now you're planning a tour with Charlie Parr? Yes.
Yeah, in November I'll be on the road with Charlie. Okay. I've been playing with him off and on for now like a number of years. I co-produced his last couple albums. I'm in the spring going on tour with Low. I just started playing with them because they had a big change over, the pandemic time too. Their bass player realized that he didn't really like being on the road. So it was just a really good time for like change over the pandemic, I think. But there's a number of groups that, as sort of a side woman, like there's bands that I play in, but I may not be always playing with them, right? You know what I mean? Like, so I still play with like Okie Dokie Brothers, but like depends on like the tour, depends on the time, like the run, kind of whatever. And Charlie Parr and Low, and I have a Balkan group called Orchestra Bezame. So there's a number of.
What do they do when you're not playing with them? Do they just have a different bass player? Or?
No. So like, for example, Okie Dokie Brothers, they'll just play as a duo, or sometimes they'll just do like a trio, because bass is not always the instrument you always need or want and things. And like, I
usually like it.
I mean, I like it too, obviously. Yeah. But so Charlie's on the. Well, actually, he just got back. I think like he's getting back tonight. But like he did a run where basically all of it was solo, or he met up with certain people like in the towns he was already at. So a lot of times it's just kind of like logistical kind of reasons. Okay. For that.
Not too many scheduling conflicts then. It's pretty.
Well, there's definitely been scheduling conflicts, but it's a good problem to have, I guess.
Oh yeah, no, I believe it.
Yeah.
But you just recently relocated to Mankato during the pandemic, as long as we're talking about change.
Yes.
Like, tell us a little bit about like the differences between like taking that kind of workload from Mankato versus taking that up from the cities.
Yeah. Well, I've been commuting a lot north. And I used to live right in downtown Minneapolis. And there's things that I didn't totally think about. It was almost impulsive, but it also wasn't super impulsive. Like I was ready for a big change from moving to Minneapolis to here. I had been in Minneapolis for over 20 years, just about 20 years, because I went to high school, the arts high school up there. And there's little things that I didn't think about. So in downtown Minneapolis, like if I'm like, oh, my friend who lives down in New Orleans, she just had a terrible fiance situation breakup deal. She's like, can you come? I was like, yeah, totally. Like, I'm going to find a cheap flight. I'm going to walk. I'm like, no, I'm not. I can't just like walk down to the light rail and then end up at the airport, So, and like, oh, it's going to cost more if I want to drive up, like whatever. So there's like logistical things like that. But yeah.
What sort of opportunities or interesting things has it opened up, or like so logistical challenges, has it been positive in other ways?
I mean, I'm really enjoying being away from the city. I'm really enjoying like the cost of living is quite a bit less here. and meeting new people and just having things kind of shaken up a little bit. And I feel really awesome, like great that connected with you guys and have had other people that have kind of reached out, and I've gotten to do some performing around here too. And I teach private lessons, so some people are like, hey, teach our kid piano. I'm like, great, let's do this, so yeah, there's benefits. I feel like it's I've always good for artists to like get out of their comfort zone a little bit and to try new things, right? And it in some ways, like now this whole like, okay, I'm focusing on trying to do more solo work, also because I don't know a lot of people around here or go out as much. It's like, oh, now I can just kind of like stay in and try to do this too. But yeah, it's gorgeous. Like I love not worrying about my catalytic converter being stolen like overnight.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they do go missing around here sometimes.
Do they?
Too. I mean, they have, but it's like a North Mankato problem.
North Mankato. You sound like it's like North Minneapolis problem or something.
No, it's happened, but like it is like it's hard not to love like the proximity and the simplicity of living here is just like awesome.
Do you think it sounds like what you're saying a little bit there is that as of more recently you've like encountered some of the frictions of living south of like a transportation hub too, so like is that something you're like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna work out long term, or are you like you know?
Yeah, I think it's gonna work out. I mean, part of my life pre-pandemic was I'd be on the road fairly often, and it doesn't really like matter where you live if you are on the road for a lot, like maybe getting to and from the airport for like a 6-week thing won't be quite as easy, but once I'm on that thing, it really doesn't matter. And when I first moved down here, like there just wasn't like things weren't open or whatever anyway. So it was like, I'm not going to be traveling up. And now that things are kind of getting back to normal, I'm like, oh, okay. So how am I going to work this new reality? But I think it is like super doable, and it already has been. Yeah. And I look forward to having more reasons and more opportunities here to like not say, yeah, I'll go up to play that. I've got something here that I'm playing, so.
You have something coming up here. We just chatted about it right before. Maybe tell us a little bit about that project and that show. Yeah.
So on Halloween from 4 to 6 p.m., I'm playing at the Mankato. On the patio is the idea. If the weather is really bad, we'll like go inside, but probably we'll be outside. And it's a kind of a vintage trad jazz and blues quartet made up of Myra from Myra and the Moonshiners. She actually played blues on Belgrade, which I got to play with her for that. She's super great. And then Debbie Briggs also, and they do these really crazy, great harmonies. And then this drummer Beth, who's phenomenal. And I'll be playing bass. And then this gal Alyssa on like fiddle or violin, whatever. I don't know what we should call it necessarily for this project, but it's called the Good Time Gals. And it's sort of so Myra and Debbie have been doing this for a while, and they wanted to expand it to have, more members. And we're actually going into Pachyderm to record on the 1st, and the 2nd is when I think they're up there the whole week, but we'll be doing the bass stuff at the beginning of the week. So it just made sense being like, let's just like play a show and do this. So it should be super fun. It's free. Really great musicians, really great soloists, and fun.
That sounds cool.
It should be pretty fun.
Good Time Gals.
The Good Time Gals.
If you had any doubt with a name like that,
right?
Like, is this going to be fun? It's going to be a good time.
You better have fun.
Are they local around here? Are they
No, they're all from
or?
the Twin Cities.
Okay.
Yeah. Although Alyssa spends a lot of time on a farm, and I think it's not near Eau Claire, so not too far out of the Twin Cities.
Cool.
But I'll have to find out. It's been a minute. I haven't seen her since before the pandemic and stuff. So
You play music with a bunch of different groups. It sounds like a lot of which you're coming in as a supporting act, like or what do they call it? Not a supporting element, supporting person.
well, just
The bass
band.
player.
Yeah, the bass player.
Band player.
The band.
What's it like coming into a project? What do you, especially, I mean, I understand maybe what it would be like to show up to someone's basement and like jam for a little bit, but like what's it like to come into an established music project and have to like get onboarded into the way that they perform and the way that they tour and the way that they like
Right.
live, basically?
That's a great question. Well, it varies so much with different groups. So I don't know, like a month or so ago, I subbed with a group called the Sean Johnson Big Band Experience, and they had me out for just a weekend. We flew into Nashville, flew out of North Carolina. But like, it was like, they're used to having kind of some rotating members in the band. So like they had like the charts for me, they had, like samples of all the songs. So that's one thing. Like, and you just get used to it. It's going to be fine, more or less. But then there's also like folks that have like nothing. It's all by ear. It's like, here's some albums. Like, this is great. We may or may not have a rehearsal. See you on stage, but again, I think you just kind of get used to it and you develop an ear and to do that, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's where the practice proficiency and like
Lots of
having
practice.
having had that friction before helps. Like, you ever had a train wreck one where you showed up prepared to do one thing and it was something different?
Yeah, but not in a long time, thankfully. Well, actually, so I grew up, my family moved to Mankato in 8th grade. And part of the reason why I started playing bass is because my father is a musician and a drummer and was like a pretty big influence. And he used to do a regular like jazz gig at a cafe here called Cafe Camarda, which was in kind of like where Blue Boat is now, but I think it was actually more whatever's one
Atomic Star.
Yeah, something there. And it was like this Italian restaurant, and he would get different players to come down from the Twin Cities pretty regularly and like really good bassists. And so I would just come out and like listen, and it was awesome. And we would sit and like, he'd kind of teach me what they were doing, or I'd have lessons with these folks. And then all of a sudden he's like, well, I can't find a bass player. I guess, like, can you do it? Like, we're going to, like, you'll just come. It's going to be fine. It's a 4-hour gig. And, like, I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I don't know, 15 or something. So I guess I was just kind of used to that from a pretty young age, kind of being like, all right.
Thrown in the deep end.
Doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it all just kind of from the home? Did you take any lessons, or like, what did your musicianships be like? What did the genesis look like?
I took a lot of lessons. I really enjoyed taking music lessons, except for when I was little. But I did do some violin and piano when I was like 4. And then I eventually switched to bass in like, I don't know, junior high-ish time. And I studied with some folks here, and I was in the Mankato Youth Symphony, it was called at the time, and was in school orchestra. I was a super like dorchestra nerd. Like, but it was great. And like was, jazz band, like whatever I could do, but then quickly kind of grew towards, I would go to Northfield for some lessons, did things. And then I learned about like, there was like arts schools that you could study music at in high school time. So I spent 1 year, I auditioned and went out to Interlochen Arts Academy in Michigan and studied with like the like this guy, Derek Weller, he was the principal bass player for the Detroit Symphony and some folks. And then from there, I went to Perpich Center for Arts Education, which is in Golden Valley, but it used to just be called, like, it used to be just like the Arts High. Now there's so many cool opportunities for high schoolers around Minnesota, especially for different like art and music chartered schools. But anyway, and while I was there, I was studying with Chris Brown from the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, but also this whole time I was like taking kind of like jazz lessons with different people. Chris Bates, Adam Linz, Gary Rayner were some of the people. And then I went to the U of M and got a degree in classical bass or double bass performance, which was like a classical emphasis. But while there, was playing around the Twin Cities all the time. So lots of time in the frat.
Do any of the projects or performances from that time persist?
That's a great question. No and yes. So my friend Tasha, who's a keyboard player, we met freshman year of high school and of college, and have spent we've been in a lot of different projects together, but sharing some of the same repertoire, like I've been working with her for quite a long time. So that persists. But otherwise not so much, I guess. Like specific, but there's still people that I played with back then that I play with now besides like Tasha and stuff. But yeah.
Do you think you'll tour your solo project ever?
I don't know. It was really interesting. Like, so not to talk too much about Charlie, but like I was just on the phone with him like yesterday or the day before, and he was just mentioning, like, wow, yeah, I kind of forgot like how much time you are spending alone on the road, like doing that. And I love traveling, and I love traveling by myself, but I don't know if it'd be as fun being on tour completely by yourself as it is when you get to play with other people, So I'm not sure, but I would love to try it sometime. I mean, like if there was an opportunity to and people were interested in it, that'd be the biggest honor, and I would totally go, but I don't know if it's really in the cards or a sustainable idea. Not that really matters, but yeah, we'll see.
You'll be able to feel that out, I suppose.
Exactly.
What's the typical tour schedule look like for some of the bands you've performed with? Is it like a couple weeks, a month, 3 months, 2 years?
Well, I've never done anything that long.
I don't even know what the typical is. So.
I don't really know if there is a typical either. Like I think it kind of.
Sure. I suppose some people could just go
some
as
groups
long as they want.
Go.
Basically.
I've usually just gone for like, I don't know if it's been 4, 6, or 8 weeks for like the longest. But like the thing I'm doing in November, like we're doing like a 4 day. This is with Charlie. Like we're doing like a 3 or 4 day thing. Come back for like a couple days, and then it's like a week. And then we'll be back. And then with Low this spring, assuming everything goes okay as far as travel can go with like the pandemic and visas and stuff, I think that's I don't know if it's like a 3 week on, come back for a week, do another 3 weeks kind of a deal.
Okay.
So, but yeah, there's so many different types of stuff. I've never done like a tour busy tour. I got invited to one time, but it wasn't the right fit for me. But mostly like vans or
whatever gets you to the next venue.
Yeah, totally.
Cool venues. Where's the coolest venue and why?
Where's the coolest venue and why?
Or just, one you've hit, one you've played at that like struck you as being interesting. First that came to mind. I'm sure one
okay, well, the first thing that came to mind was in this town, Keshkemet, Hungary, when I was very young. I was touring, like, it was like a tour, but we were also just traveling, and I was borrowing upright basses wherever I could, and was with this Irish sax player. And we were playing kind of Balkan music, and like there was just like this town like center, and they had like a this guy Aaron Siliagi who played the jaw harp. But like they call it something that we would never call it here. But like he had like this psychedelic jaw harp thing, and there was like crazy like lights all over these cool old buildings. and the echoes were really, really amazing. So like the acoustics, that was really cool. But another like personal highlight for me was Preservation Hall in New Orleans. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that place.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really historic venue that like is kind of dumpy, like really dumpy, but like some of the greatest like jazz started there, and like Sweet Emma and like folks like played it, and like had the opportunity to play there once, and it was like a dream come true. Because I actually, when I like had just graduated high school, I went on a really long road trip with a different friend, and we're like, we're going to New Orleans, we're seeing where all this stuff like happened, where this started, and we have to go to Preservation Hall because this is like where our music is from, you know, this is where it started. And then fast forward a number of years, and then being invited to play that was great. But like, where else? First Avenue, I think is world class, and the people that work there are awesome, and it's always been great. I got to play like Lincoln Center, but not like the main room, but Lincoln Center in New York City was really freaking cool. The Austin City Limits like festival, Austin City Limits deal, that was cool. The Pabst Theater in Milwaukee is also really awesome. It's like this old historic theater, and then the basement though, the green room, is like so good. They have their own like the barista for you, and they've got like like a foosball table, like all this person, like it's just awesome.
Like, do we have to leave?
It's so seriously, it was, and all catered really well. That was the highlights. I don't know. I could probably
That's
try to
cool.
brainstorm.
No, that's
That
very
was getting me like all these memories right now. Like,
Also, it was I think that was the second or third time you mentioned Balkan music. And what's your connection, fascination? What's going on there?
that's a great question. I feel like I've also said that's a great question a lot. Thanks for your questions. So I guess just the rhythms and the different like scales that are used in that music is super interesting to me.
What are the rhythms? I'm like, I can't conjure Balkan music in my
Okay,
head.
so Balkan music is, the Balkans are like a portion of like Eastern Europe essentially. So it's the term gypsy is not a good term. It's actually very derogatory, but a lot of people would think of
Certainly.
that
Yeah.
as like a description. But like, so like things that maybe are in like 7/8 or 11/8, like there'd be like pulses like so like and it can be either very like Romanian brass bandy, or it can be more like Hungarian string bandy. But
Okay.
yeah, and my fascination with it, I guess, actually, that thing I was talking about being in Hungary, I discovered like Balkan music kind of in a random way. I had gone to this like workshop / school called the School for Improvised Music, that it was in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and there was like folks from all over the world that had come in and to study. And I had met the sax player there, and he was living in England from Ireland, had spent a lot of time doing whatever, and was really into Balkan music. So we went, I met him overseas. We were traveling, exploring music, doing our own shows, whatever. And we ended up in Hungary, and going into Transylvania and into Romania. And I experienced some, like Balkan folk music firsthand, and it just like blew my mind. It was just amazing. The level of musicianship on really rugged instruments, and it just felt really, primal sounds really derogatory, but it was just really beautiful, and people coming out and dancing and all these like really cool specific like dances that happen with it, and it's in the mountains, and there's like a blind fiddle player, and like it was great, and it really got me excited about folk music in general and Balkan music. And that whole experience basically I came back to the United States and was like, oh, well, there's like folk music here. I wonder what the folk music is like. And I started like going to square dances and started playing in more like traditional music. But before that, it was all like jazz and classical and hip hop and punk rock and things. So it was a very big like personal turning point, like having this experience. So
what did you find in America that you liked that reminded you of those experiences?
Well, in the Twin Cities, which is where I was based out of and living at the time, there's a super thriving old time scene, which is like music pre-bluegrass and very fiddle oriented. And there was at the Eagles Club in the Seward neighborhood, there'd be regular square dances. I think they're about to start them up again, but kind of connecting to that community was very cool to me. I really appreciated the oral tradition of it, and there's a lot of like clogging, like Appalachian style clogging, and there's a lot of festivals and that are really like homemade type festivals where people hang out, make food, jam, trade tunes, but it's very acoustic, very like it's just literally about the history and about like tradition and stuff. So that finding that was one of my favorite stuff.
I just have one more.
Yeah.
I was going to say of all of these styles that's influenced you over time, what has played most into your solo work?
Probably all of it. I mean, I know that might sound like a cop-out answer, but it like...
Certainly. Well, not...
Cop-out?
A little bit, but...
Well, but how can you... you can't... No. I don't know. It's all there, right? Like, everything's influences everything a little bit. Like, and... Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel yeah.
And
it's all related too, though. Like, I could be like, oh, well, I'm probably the jazz. Well, what the heck is jazz, right? Like, jazz is a collection of certain traditional music and pop music and stuff. So, like, okay, it's like Balkan. Well, what's Balkan? Balkan's sort of like sometimes like kind of classically-ish. So, I don't know.
That's a fine answer, I think.
Yeah.
My last one is tell us where the bass came from. This one you brought with you today. Is this one you've had for a long time? You just pick it up on the way here?
Well, you want to know that's okay.
I'm curious.
I know it's your last question, but it's actually kind of a long story.
Oh, we're here. Come on, just tell
I'm curious now. Yeah.
Okay, so full circle, that gig that my dad used to have at Cafe Camarda, there was this regular there who came down and was really into going to auctions. He mentioned to my dad that there was an auction in Garden City happening, that they were auctioning off an old bass fiddle. It happened to be on over Thanksgiving weekend when I had come home to my parents' house from Interlochen, Michigan, realizing that I was going to go to a high school that didn't have a bass for me. Like, Interlochen had like basses, so all of a sudden I'm like, crap, I gotta buy a bass. I gotta find a bass. So my dad was like, well, I just heard about this auction that's having this, like, there's a bass fiddle. We don't know what it means, whatever. We go out to this garden shed, or a outbuilding big thing. They start auctioning stuff off, and I see that in the corner, and it's almost like in pieces. And but I knew I like wanted it. Like, it's old. It's from like either the late 1800s or early 1900s. And we waited for like all these other things to go, waited, and then they started the bidding at like a ridiculously low amount, and it was just me and my dad bidding against like a lady who wanted it for like lawn furniture or something. And then we got it, and then there was this great luthier named Steve Benefelt who fixed up basses for like the Minnesota Orchestra and all sorts of different stuff, and he had it for a long while, and he's like he was an amazing character himself. But that's where the bass, it all just sort of. Oh, another weird thing about it is that it's 5/8 size, which is like a little bit smaller, and I'm kind of small, so it like happened to work perfectly.
That's cool. Neat. I when we were filming your musical performances, I noticed it looked like it wasn't made recently.
No, it's pretty rough looking. There's a lot of
some good character. I mean, it sounded beautiful. I don't think that's a problem to say.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
It's got a year or two on it.
A couple centuries. Wait.
That's older than my house, it sounds like. I got an old house.
Yeah, so.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we wrap up with some plugs if you want to direct people anywhere to either see your music, things you've worked with, or that cool recent current blog post.
Yeah, there was a great blog post on the Current. I don't know how like they archive that, but but it's up there. I have a SoundCloud page. I have a Bandcamp page. I'm at Liz Draper Bass, I think, or something like that on Instagram. I don't know. I don't have a website or anything. I don't know if I ever want one, but yeah.
You were pretty searchable. Just, yeah, it works out just fine. Cool.
The internet,
All right. Shall we wrap it up there?
Heck yeah.
Cool. Hey, thank you for joining us. This was
you.
wonderful. It was great to hear you play and cool to chat. So
Thanks so much for having me. I love what you guys are doing.
Cool.
Yeah.